Yeah, it rains every day.
Okay, I'm gonna do this kind of formally. I actually have prepared an introduction. So first, welcome to everybody who has joined. Thank you so much for being here, and I'm so excited about having a conversation with the one and only David Lebovitz. I'm thrilled you could all be here. So just so everybody knows how this is going to go after that like crazy start, I'll introduce David. David and I will chat about his new cookbook for 30 or 35 minutes. And then we'll open up the floor for everybody's questions, which you can drop in the chat, which everybody is very familiar with since we have gotten to know it intimately in the interim. So we'll have 10 or 15 minutes of questions for David, and then we'll wrap up at a quarter to the hour. So I am delighted to introduce a person who actually needs no introduction, David Lebovitz, one of my favorite cookbook authors ever, and a titan in the world of sweets. David has been a professional cook and baker for most of his life. He spent nearly 13 years at Chez Panisse and was named one of the top pastry chefs in the Bay Area by the San Francisco Chronicle. He left the restaurant business in 1999 to write books, and that's the same year that he created his website, davidlebovitz.com, which actually kind of became one of the first, if not the first, food blogs ever, which is so cool. In 2003, he moved to Paris and really blogified the website. David is the author of wonderful cookbooks, including Drinking French, My Paris Kitchen, The Perfect Scoop, and The Great Book of Chocolate, plus 2 memoirs, The Sweet Life in Paris and La Pain, and of course, Ready for Dessert, which I have the visual aid for. Ready for Dessert,
Oh,
which was originally published in 2010, and the revised edition was just published a few weeks ago. Welcome, David Lebovitz. Thank you so much for being here.
thank you, Leslie. I'm actually excited because you seem to have figured out how to show a book cover not in the selfie mode, so it's the right way. I haven't figured that out.
Okay, so I don't feel as bad for my technical idiocy then.
And the
So
reason I look a little uncomfortable is I was trying to adjust my camera because I have these 2 lights up here.
I
It
I
looks
feel
kind of
you. I have the fan
so.
going, but
Okay.
I think we're okay. We're
Okay.
gonna you look great. That's nice to see you in your Paris kitchen. This is going to be very loose and informal. So I just thought we'd jump in with talking about Ready for Dessert. You published it originally 15 years ago. So why did you decide to publish a revised version?
So I get to talk to people like you. Do you have a new book? You get to meet all these really interesting people. Well, the book was written. It was actually a mashup of 2 different books that I did. My first and my second book. And those books, one was a fruit book. People write to me and they're like, "You should do a fruit book." I'm like, "I did." I go to the used bookstore and try to find a copy. So it was I published these 2 books, and then when ebooks started around 2004, publishers had a reckoning, and they all were like freaking out about cookbooks, and they stopped publishing cookbooks. 'Cause they're like, these aren't, or there was a big problem. And they got rid of a lot of people, and they took a lot of books out of print, and including my books. Fortunately, I had moved to a different publisher, 10 Speed Press, who I love. I
I love
love
them
10 Speed
too.
Press.
Yeah.
And we became friends over the years. Like, we're personal friends as well as professional friends. And they said to me, "Well, why don't you combine the 2 books? This is around 2011, and we'll do like a whole new book." So we did that, and I could talk about the transition for another 43 minutes. But to make a long story short, a couple of years ago, my editor contacted me and she goes, "I think it would be great to do like a whole new package, do a whole new book, rephotograph it, add new recipes." And since I love working with them so much, and since so much has changed in the last 10 years, 13 or 14 years in baking and cooking, I thought it's time to revise the book.
Okay, cool. That's great, and we're all the luckier for it. So That actually was a question I had, like, how have things evolved in the pastry world,
Well,
in
one
that
thing that's interesting, if you go to the supermarket in America, the baking aisle's like really exciting. There are all these interesting chocolate chips. When I started baking, this is, when most of the people watching this weren't even born. When I started baking, like there was no chocolate in the supermarket. It was baker's blocks of chocolate. And recipes in those days used to say like 1 square of chocolate or 6 squares of chocolate.
and the
Um,
recipes were painted on the walls of the caves in those days.
yeah, and chisels.
Yeah.
And I had hair and everything. And so, now you go to the store and there's like 17 kinds of sugar, brown sugars. There's all these different chocolate chips like Guittard. There's, French chocolates and so forth, bean to bar chocolates, and really good butters in America. And things have really changed. Almond powder changed my life. The fact that people could get almond powder because it's such a common baking ingredient in Europe and in America, it used to be, you get a little packet, it had 2 tablespoons in it, so
Oh, so
you didn't wanna say, a cup of almond flour, and now it's
oh,
okay.
yeah. So almond powder, meaning like what we call in America almond flour or ground almonds or
Yeah, there's, like, almond flour, almond meal, powdered almonds, and I think almond meal has the skins on, I'm not too sure. In French, it's called, brut, like, raw,
yeah.
I guess, and I just found brut almond powder in France, so I'm after 24 years. So
Wow, wow.
yeah.
And also, David just published, was it your last post on your fabulous Substack, which I highly recommend everybody subscribe to. Probably you already are, but the last post was about the shoot for your book
Yeah.
and shopping, and it had some great stuff about buying ingredients in Paris. And
Mhm.
and going to, I didn't know about that hypermarché called, what is it that you said was not in Paris?
Oh, Grand Frais or
Grand
Grand
Pré.
Frais, which means, big freshness or, it's the supermarket. And, to be quite honest, in America, people, sort of poo-poo, Whole Foods. They're like, "Oh, it's kinda," but compared to what we had when I was growing up, Whole Foods is like going to a farm, it's like all this stuff that you would never find in your life. Anyhow, in France, you know, I don't shop too much at the supermarket. The supermarkets are un peu, because you say in French, a little sad. They're not fun to go to. People are sort of combative. It's pretty unpleasant. The cashiers don't want to be there, and neither do you.
Oh, I thought
So I
that was just France in general, and I could say that because 'cause I'm married to a Frenchman, so,
Okay. Well, if
yeah.
he's from Paris,
He's not.
it's
He went to high school in Paris and lived there, I don't know, a bunch of years, but, not from
okay.
Paris. But,
Well,
all over
usually,
France, you go to the supermarket and people are not nice, not happy to be there.
well, if like in the South they're like friendly, or in the countryside, Paris is a city. Everybody's like stressed out and aggressive. So, but Guangfrey is right outside of the city. I mean, they're all over France. There's not a lot of them, but it's
Never
this
seen it.
huge like warehouse store, and they have things like
Mhm.
fresh corn in the summer. It's not like great American corn, but they'll have like all this citrus. They have like the butter. There's like 25 kinds of butter. It's amazing. And I brought I had 2 food stylists in the book because we had a 3-week shoot, which is completely insane. Usually a book shoot is a week, and they were like blown away. And I love the 2 food stylists. So then we went to Metro, the professional store with all the
Yeah.
baking supplies.
Which also looked really cool. The shelves, that you took, that you showed a shot of, reminded me of, I don't know if it's even still there in LA, a store called Surface,
Yeah,
which,
Surface is great.
yeah. Yeah, I don't
It's
know if
it's
it's
a
still
little
there. But that's
yeah,
open to the public, and it's for wholesale and retail, so it's really cool.
yeah, and I think it's still family owned, Surface. But Metro, you have to have a card. It's French, or not French, German, but it's France. So you have to have a card, and you have to have a wholesale number, and you have to apply, and there's paperwork. Anyway, so I got in. So it was fun doing all the shopping with them because they were the ones who were going to be making my recipes for the book. People probably, they might not realize this, but when you write a book, it's a lot. You shoot like 3, 4, or 5 pictures a day, and that's a lot of cooking, baking, cleaning up, prepping for the next day. So it's pretty intense, and I was really happy to have two amazing people with me in my kitchen.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
And they loved baking my recipes. So that was it was great because they bake recipes all the time, and they were like, "All your recipes are really good. They work."
that is so cool. That's so cool, and and it turned out great, and the photos look fantastic, and I'm so excited to be cooking from it this month. And as I think you probably know, David, the book is Ready for Dessert is the October selection for the Cooks Without Borders Cookbook Club.
Huh.
So everybody who's been participating in that has been, we've just all started to cook from it, and yeah, very exciting.
Okay.
And I have a visual aid because I just wrote about this is a peanut butter cookie.
Ah,
It's your peanut butter cookie, and
okay. It's yours.
it's mine now. It's mine now. But my husband and son. Well, my son doesn't live with us. My husband is allergic to peanuts, and he's away in France. So I made a whole batch for myself.
Good.
And because that was such like a piggy thing to do, I thought, often you can freeze some of the dough, like, form it into cookies and
Hmm.
and freeze that. So I've done that. I haven't tried baking that off yet. Well, do you think
Okay.
that'll work?
Yeah.
Okay. But I
Um,
also tried baking some and freezing them and seeing how they eat just defrosted. And I'm here to tell you that it works and they're really good.
cool. Well, great. I
Yeah.
want to ask you about your husband because I don't want to stereotype anybody, but does he not like peanut butter in general, or is he really allergic?
Such a good question. He had that prejudice when we met, but then
Mhm.
over the years, he fell in love with peanut butter and fell
Ah,
so hard that he ate it every morning for several
okay.
years on toast. And he's convinced that that's what caused his allergy.
Because
So
my
he's
partner
totally
loves.
bereft.
Well, my partner, well, he's French. He eats spicy food. He loves everything. He'll eat peanut sauce, like at an Asian restaurant. He'll eat peanuts at the bar, at a cafe. Peanut butter, no, which is good because I bring back peanut butter from America and I don't have to share it. So,
I hear you. It's so funny.
yeah.
So David, what I know this probably won't be easy, but if there were like one recipe from the book,
Uh-huh.
that like somebody, people sometimes buy cookbooks and then they don't actually cook from them. But like
Yeah.
if somebody was going to just make one recipe from your book, like what is the recipe that you would be upset if people didn't make from your book?
I would say unequivocally, the fresh ginger cake.
Oh,
Um, because that was when my first book came out. Um, The New York Times wrote about it, which was kind of in those days, that was pretty much the only venue that people had. The newspaper food sections, I should say, because San Francisco, we had a food section. I know you worked in Texas. I think it was Dallas.
no, I was at the time, I was food editor at the LA Times
Oh,
from 2003 through 2007.
okay.
Yeah, so and we had like the only like super fantastic test kitchen, like really, we
Yeah.
tested everything there. We reviewed a lot of cookbooks. We had a
Okay.
really
Why did
good
I
food
think it was
section.
Texas? I don't know.
Because then I
So
moved
anyhow,
to Texas in
so
20.
this gin- so the ginger cake was sort of the star of the show. Everybody was making this cake. And I started seeing it in cafes and other restaurants,
Oh my
and people
God.
people were like, "Well, they should, give you money." I'm like, "Well, it's a recipe and they're making it, so I don't care." Good, that's what you want people to do when they buy your book is make the food, and people. There was in my recent newsletter, I talked about Ruth Reichel. She came to a bakers meeting in San Francisco, and a group of professional bakers, 30 of us all made the same recipe, the angel food cake, and brought them in. And everybody was stunned at how different each cake was. And then, like I said, professional bakers, um, not people who are like, oh, I'm not going to add the sugar. I'm going to, go rogue. So
Right. Yeah.
So the ginger cake, is funny because I saw it a couple months ago in Brooklyn. Yeah, and, it's funny, I don't make it that much anymore because we don't really get molasses in France, and
Mm-mm.
that's one of the components, and we just I have so much dessert here, it's like, "Oh, I'm gonna make a cake, okay." Um, but every once in a while, I'll make it, and I'm like, "Oh, this is really good." So so, I think everyone should make the fresh ginger cake, and one of the big changes, everyone's like, "Why'd you revise the book?" When wrote my first book, I didn't want to assume people had food processors. So I was like, hand chop the ginger. And people were writing to me like, I got carpal tunnel. Like, I was like, I had to get like my kids to help. There was so much ginger. So now, I've revised the recipe. You can use a
Oh,
food processor.
okay. Yeah, it says 4 ounces, ginger peeled and thinly sliced.
Yeah. But that's actually a lot. Like, and I've peeled a lot of ginger in my life.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Oh, so you could do that on a mandolin and then chop it really fast with a knife also,
if you have a mandolin,
if you have a mandolin.
I, I had one for like 8 years and I never used it.
Oh, well, at least
You
it
know,
didn't, it didn't eat your hand like they,
no.
okay, I use my mandolin all the time. But, okay,
By
so
the way, I just want to
I'm
say,
gonna make that. I'm sorry?
okay, people are chiming in. It's very nice. I'm reading the comments while trying to concentrate on the discussion. So I do see you all. Hello, Fernando, who I worked with at Chez Panisse.
Oh,
Surface is still
wow.
there. The pistachio cake, yes, is the bomb. The pistachio cardamom cake. And that's all I'm going to read right now. But
Oh god, such great
it's great. I love
comments.
comments.
I know, they're so cool. Okay, that's great. Okay, so, yeah, so I'm definitely gonna make that, and, yeah, and then in terms of what other recipes are new to this book
Mhm.
that you're excited about?
Well, my books are always a reflection of where I'm at. Um, I was just reading about an interview with an agent, and the agent was saying something like a lot of publishers, have people with like large Instagram followings do books, and he's like, and they think that's going to amplify the author, and he's like, no, publishers should amplify the author's vision rather than their followers and so forth. And I'm translating that quote very badly, but my books are always about my life, and I weave that into my life. I weave my life rather into the book. So I can write a book on pastries, but I'll be talking about something very obtuse like a doctor's appointment or something. But since I've moved to France, and I've become French as well, like your husband,
And like
although
me
I like,
soon, I just haven't done the paperwork, which gets
oh,
harder and harder every year that I delay it.
yeah, and they just changed the language requirement
Oh, great.
and the test, and they gave the test to the Guardian newspaper gave the test to 10 French scholars and 5 passed.
Oh, no, I'm gonna okay, maybe I'll have a problem.
So what I wanted to do when I redid the book was I wanted to add French recipes. So I added things like palais breton, which are these very thick salted butter shortcakes that my food stylist, once again, and if you're watching, hi, I won't tell everybody, but you ate all the cookies. Then he made them again when he got home. And I did a riolé, which is a rice pudding, because I figured out there's a restaurant in Paris that's very famous for their rice pudding, and I figured out their trick. But what I was most excited about was I live down the street from Tapisserie Bakery, and they do these maple tartlets. And people don't associate maple in France, but they had a Canadian pastry chef, and she made these amazing maple tarts, and they still make them at the bakery. And so I said, I want to put those in the book. So I figured out how to do them for home cooks because it's a tricky recipe, and I don't like publishing tricky recipes. Um, so I made it, and anybody can make it at home. And don't tell, but my partner said it was better than the bakeries.
Oh, I
So,
hope the bakery's not watching, or I hope they know.
we'll see. No, they're doing very well. They do them with very thin pastry shells, and I couldn't
Yeah,
ask people to do that
yeah,
French pastry at home.
yeah. Okay, I'm gonna show a picture of them. 125. Oh, here's the Palais Breton that you're
Oh, I
styling
love
with
those. Yeah.
colors. And then 125, the maple chart is I don't know if you guys like seeing these visual aids. I always
I
think it's
found it.
awesome. Oh, you did? Oh, you're good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Those look great.
And it's
Okay.
funny because they need a lot of whipped cream. And I know people are always like, oh, I don't want to put too much on, but you have
Little
to do.
little.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you
And
ever
I don't like overdone desserts either, but it needs
Yeah.
all that whipped cream.
Yeah. Okay. Do you ever this is probably a dumb question because you've probably written about this a million times. Do you ever whip crème fraîche into the whipped cream?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would that be
The
good with
problem
that?
with Yeah, the problem is, if you don't eat it right away, if you put it in the fridge the next day, it's all crème fraîche.
Oh, well, if you need
Yeah,
more crème fraîche, that could be, but
yeah.
can you hold like, I've never like, I don't think that regular whipped cream holds that well, does it? Like, the next day
Um,
or
no, but there are tricks. Some people say, like, put a melted marshmallow in there, add some crème fraîche. There's a product you can buy in the French supermarket, and when we were shooting the book, I found it. It's called, like, Chantifix, 'cause crème chantilly is whipped cream in French. It's like a powder that holds whipped cream. So I bought it for the
only in
food
France.
stylist as a joke. So,
That is so funny because so much crème chantilly is eaten in France that they have a specific
yeah.
product for it. Um, I was curious about the cherry gâteau basque, which
Mhm.
I bought all the ingredient. I love gâteau basque. I bought all the ingredients for it, and then I was having people over for dinner, and of course left everything to the last minute, and didn't realize there was a part that where you have to refrigerate for 2 hours. So I'm like, okay, that's for another time. At least I have the cherries and what
And
have
that
you.
one's a funny tart 'cause, the dough's a little messy, and people are like, "Oh, it's not gonna look good." I'm like, "Don't worry about it. It can break, it could do whatever. When it bakes in the oven, it comes out great."
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
That's reassuring. Um, and but that one, I think you said in the intro that that was one that you updated. Is that right?
Mhm.
That recipe,
I'd
or
have to look.
am I inventing? Oh,
You might be
that
inventing stuff. That's okay.
it wouldn't be the first time. So can we talk a little bit about the perfect scoop? Another of your cookbooks is one of my favorite cookbooks ever. And,
Oh, you have
and I
the OG version.
yeah, I've written in the past that, that if that it's the only ice cream book anybody needs, because I refer to it so often. It's always where I start, whether I just want to make a fantastic ice cream or I'm developing a recipe and I'm like, well, how did David do it? Start from
Mhm,
there and then try to make it original. But there are some ice cream recipes in Ready for Dessert, and I was
mhm.
wondering how you thought about that since you already have this book full of ice cream. Like, how did you decide which ones to put in the new book?
Well, the ice cream book was my 4th book, and my original book, Room for Dessert, I was working at Chez Panisse. I'd worked there for 13 years in the pastry department, and there was a wonderful book published called Chez Panisse Desserts by one
I
of the
have it.
owners of the restaurant. Yeah, of course, the
Yeah, the
best.
the old
It's
the,
like
that one's really battered, that in every
yeah,
way, torn,
but it should
battered, like
be. And I proposed doing another Chez Panisse cookbook, a baking book, another Chez Panisse dessert book. And I talked to Alice about it, and she said, "You should do your own book." And that's when I started working on the proposal for Room for Dessert. Because over the years, people are always asking for recipes. This is before the internet. Like, if people wanted to say recipe, please, they'd have to do it to your face. It wasn't like a comment. So
yeah, yeah,
but people would come in or they'd call it, in the old days, people would call us at Chez Panisse. It was cute. Like in Berkeley, we have some lemons. Do you want them? Sure, come on in. We'll give you cookies in exchange or something. Anyway, so I wanted to publish some of those recipes, and that was the basis of the book. And some of them were ice cream recipes. I, at, I'm not sure of the transition, but I decided to do an ice cream book, and there was a publisher that was super interested in it. And then when my agent sent her the proposal, she turned it down, and she called me and she said, "Well, because you don't have a show on Food Network."
Oh, Jesus.
So another my publisher, 10 Speed, they published the book, and I think it's the number one selling ice cream book in the world.
Not
So it's like
surprising. It
the
should
reason I
be.
say this not to brag, but a lot of times these people don't know. Just in life, it's funny that someone will say no, it's not a good idea. It's like,
Yeah.
well, to them it's not a good idea, but maybe it is to you. So
It was to me. It was to me. That's interesting that Alice Waters said, "No, go, write your own book, do your own book." That it sounds so well, yeah, was it like that, or was it like this incredibly generous thing? I mean, it sounds like so nurturing and generous for her to do
no,
that.
I'm getting goosebumps just because I'm part of the famille panisse, as Alice calls it. And she was just here and we had dinner, and it was very emotional. She's just a wonderful, sentimental person, and I'm always part of that family, no matter what happens. Um, and I owe everything to the restaurant and her. She's really actually, incredible, for everything you hear about Chez Panisse and her and so forth. She runs this restaurant. She's been doing it for 50 years with 150 people working in it. Two restaurants, an office, and plus her life. She has a edible schoolyard project and so forth. And she's really a dreamer. And we don't see that as much anymore. Maybe we hear about, oh, this guy's dreaming of starting a tech company or cyber something. It's like, no, her dream is to get children to eat better and to garden and learn where their food comes from. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, that's you can't argue with that.
No,
Well, I'm sure
you
some
can't
people
argue.
can, but
Yeah, yeah. But it's also, of course that's amazing about her, but also just thinking about the people who came out of that restaurant and, became their own like amazing authors and restaurateurs and everything else. It's just somebody should do
well,
like maybe they've already done it, but somebody should do like a chart about like
Well, I always thought someone should do like a spreadsheet of who worked there, but I often say to people it's because of Chez Panisse and Alice that there's radicchio in the salad at McDonald's. Because when I was there, we had radicchio, and people were like, "Is that cabbage?" And they would see us with goat cheese, and they thought that was tofu. Blood oranges. They were like, "How do you get the oranges that red color?"
yeah,
And now you go to Safeway and you can buy sun-kissed blood oranges
yeah, it's out of
and
season, of
radicchio.
course. Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. I kind of on that subject, you allude in the book, and maybe it was that your last post about things about ingredients that you can, and you've written about this before also when you come to the US and you write a post about like the things that you find here. Like, can you talk
Mhm.
about like what should like I think probably, we have a lot of people watching today, some of whom are probably in Europe, but
Okay.
probably most of which are in the United States. What are some of the ingredients that we should be appreciating a little more, those of us who live here in the United States, that you don't find in France?
Junior mints and peanut. Yes. Um, the question is what, I was dreaming, thinking about junior mints. What are some of the things you appreciate in the US? The bean to bar chocolates.
Mm.
When I wrote the Great Book of Chocolate, there were 3 bean to bar chocolate makers in America. Now there are 250.
Oh my goodness.
Um, so that's something that's like, wow, because for better or worse, often people associate America with bad food. It's like, oh, no, 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 no. There's really good food, really good coffee. So things like bean to bar chocolate, American cheese. It's expensive, like good artisan
Not the
cheeses.
individually wrapped slices. You're not talking about
No,
that.
no.
Not
But you
that kind
can
of
actually
American
buy
cheese.
good cheese at the supermarket. You can buy cheddar cheese from Vermont at the U.S. grocery store, and it's really good. And also cottage cheese. There's a brand, I think it's called Good Culture.
I always have some in I love that.
Yeah, although I wish they would make large curd. Um, because I like that. So things like that are really good in America, like hot sauces and so forth. Um, so I bring those kind of things back. I do bring back less and less because people often bring me things, even if I don't ask. It's a lot. I used to bring back pecans, but they opened actually the pecans at Costco are really good. They're always fresh, and they opened two Costco's in France, and I
They
went
did.
once.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. Huh. I had
it's
no
a little
idea.
weird.
It's weird.
Um, I
Yeah.
mean, they have different things, but they have these giant apple pies that are
Yeah.
like shrink wrapped, and they're about they're the size of a pizza. They're not like a pie. And I picked one up, and I was like, oh my god, it's like a sewer cover. It's so heavy. And I was like, do people in France really buy an apple pie that's like a yard wide? So,
Yeah, maybe for some novelty party or something.
yeah.
So we have 15 minutes left, and I think since there are so many people like putting great questions in the chat, I'd like to get to those. But there's just one more thing that I'd like to mention,
Okay.
and that is that one of the things that you write about, David, is dining in Paris, and I always love your suggestions. And when you send a post that's about where to dine, I'm always like, oh, I'm saving that one. I'm bookmarking that one. And next time I'm in Paris, I'm going to check
Hmm.
out David's pick. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. And Yeah, do you enjoy that? That's almost like being a restaurant critic, which I did for years, which I'm so happy not to do anymore. But
It's hard to be a restaurant critic.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, what you do is kind of cool because you can just feature places that you love. You don't have to write about places that you don't love.
Yeah, although I in my November newsletter, which I'm going away on, I'm going to Japan for a month. I actually wrote my newsletter in advance, and or I'm writing it now. But I wrote about a couple. I said, like, I went to a restaurant, and it was a wine bar that's really well known, and the Swiss chard on my plate wasn't cooked. It was like this the stems of rainbow chard, and I couldn't cut through them with my teeth or my knife. And so, in France, it's kind of okay to complain. As you know, you have a French husband. They will say, like, I do not like that shirt. Very ugly. So I was nice. I said, by the way, the Swiss chard's not cooked. It was all on the side of my plate and on my friend's plate, too. And the guy goes, ah bon? And that was it. So they kind of mentioned that because I actually told them for the other customers because I was thinking like French people don't like undercooked vegetables to begin with. They want things cooked through. But Swiss chard is something that always needs to be cooked through.
Yeah, yeah. Even Americans know it needs to be cooked through. Yeah.
Yeah. Even the
Um,
leaves. It's not like
yeah,
kale where you can mush them up in salad. It's like,
yeah, yeah. No, you want that. You want that cooked. Okay, David, are you up for answering some questions from the chat?
sure.
Um, let's see. How can I do this? Okay, I'm kind of going backwards here, so forgive me
Okay.
if those of you who dropped in early questions. Chef David, when I'm baking, when should I use European butter versus American butter? That's such a good question.
Well, you can always use European butter. And in America, you can get actually quite good European butter. You can get Kerrygold at the supermarket. You can get it. Trader Joe's sells a French cultured butter. And somebody in the butter business told me it's made by a very big butter company here. So, whoops. Um, I Personally, I don't like to tell people to use premium ingredients unless it really makes a difference. So in the shortbreads like the Palais Breton, I use I would tell people to use really good butter. In something like a tart dough where you want more fat, butter is usually 80% fat in America. And in France, it's usually 82 to 84%. And that does make a difference because if there's no fat, there's water, and that can make the dough a little less short or crumbly. So I usually use it in things like, I mean, if I was living in America, I use European butter all the time.
Yeah,
I haven't brought over American butter yet, but so I use
yeah,
it in things like shortbreads and tart doughs, puff pastry.
And in your like general life, you know, including savory stuff, do you like what's your like the butter that you use at home? Do you buy like fresh butter from like a you know from a I don't know traiteur or laiterie or something like that, or do you like what do you use?
If I'm testing recipes, I go to the professional store and I'll buy these blocks that are 500 grams, which is like 2 pounds. Is that two? Yeah, is that,
Uh,
oh, that's about a little over a pound. It's like
yeah,
a pound and a quarter.
yeah.
And I'll buy that, and it's usually good butter. It's it's not like the lowest end butter. But for home use, I go to a store where they sell things from small producers, and I get butter from them, and they
Mm.
cut it from big it's an anti-food waste store, and they cut it from blocks and
Oh,
sell it in
nice.
paper. But if I go to the grocery store, there's butter from Beurre d'Isigny, which
Hmm.
is in the Normandy, and that's where the Disney family's from. Isigny, they were Disney,
I never knew
Isigny.
that. That's so
Yeah. See,
wow.
they told me when I was in high school I'd never amount to anything, and there I just so you just learn something. So their family was from Normandy, Diceny. So I get Berdiceny, like for morning, for breakfast, we have salted butter every day. And I
Nice.
bake with salted butter, and people get freaked out by that. But it's like, well, I love salt, so.
Yeah. So, I mean, if a recipe calls for unsalted or salted, like, does it not make that much difference which you use as long as you like if it calls for salted and you're using unsalted, just throw in an extra pinch of salt? Is that a reasonable?
Yeah, I usually just say, just use if you wanna, like, make chocolate cookies and use salted butter, use that and skip the salt. And, recipes aren't, you know if people drive as well as, as precisely as they thought they had to make recipes, you know, we'd have a lot less accident. People would be much better drivers. But recipes aren't that critical. Like if you add recipe says half a teaspoon of salt. If you add 3/4 of a teaspoon, it's not gonna change anything. And I don't think you'd have to have a pretty fine palate to taste the difference in a cake. And also every salt is different, and it's hard in a cookbook because you don't wanna say, a half ounce, Brittany gray sea salt or three
Yeah.
quarters teaspoon, yeah, that's
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but do you think that I mean, but baking recipes are less forgiving than savory
mhm.
recipe, right? Like I'm a little bit scared to change, to not follow them to the T,
Well, I had
but
a
you're
talk with Rose Levy Birnbaum about that once, a few years ago, because she's very, not strict, but she's very precise. And I think that's good. I mean, I admire her. She's the godmother of bakers, the cake
yeah,
lady.
yeah.
But
Okay, here's
it's still, I, I don't think, if you add a teaspoon of flour extra to a cake batter, it's really not going to make a big difference. Yeah.
yeah,
You
I
know,
mean, especially as American recipes always used to only have, by the cup, which could
yeah,
be like the variation that, like, if you were actually to weigh it, it could be a pretty, like, a cup is not a cup. So,
yeah.
if
And
you
then
think about
everybody,
that, you should be able
yeah.
to not have to be that precise, I guess.
And somebody published a list on Instagram, I think it was Pastry with Jen, about it was like 6 different or 8 different people's cup of flour in grams.
Oh, that's
Uh,
great.
and it
But
was interesting to see the differences.
thank you for including both in your book. I'm kind of amazed that like even today, like in the United States, there are cookbooks published that don't have, weights and or metric
Yeah, but
equivalents. Crazy.
I have to say, when you write a cookbook, it gets looked at by copy editors and proofreaders and make sure everything's right. 80% of it now is metric conversions, making sure
Mm.
they're all correct
Yep.
and the same. And I just got a cookbook, and I opened, there's 2 cookies on opposite pages, and they call for the same amount of flour, but the metric conversion's different.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
So
that's
but it's hard, you write a cookbook and you've got 170 recipes like I do, and there's, 4 to 10 ingredients in every recipe, and,
that's it's
so
a yeah, it's a lot of
you
it's a
hope you
lot of
get them right. Yeah.
yes, you do, you do. So okay, so Valerie J. Hi, Val. Valerie J. asks, um, I am an I'll take my chances with cane sugar person, but know a lot of people who fear it. Do you get pressure to substitute dates, molasses, honey in the current avoid sugar culture?
No, because you can't substitute liquid sugar for granulated sugar. There's no well, there, usually the liquid, they call them alternative sugars like honey are like 50% sweeter than sugar. So when I was younger and worked at like the health food vegetarian restaurant that I worked at, we did everything with honey and everything was pretty heavy. Um, there's a lot of talk about nutrition and sugar, and I want to just say thank you. Thanks to sugar, I have a job. um, I like using honey. I like sorghum. I love maple syrup. Um, I think you should, find a recipe that uses those. You can make a custard and use honey or maple syrup. Although a lot of times, like honey is an acid ingredient, so if you're heating up a custard, it can curdle.
Mhm,
So, and same with brown sugar. Brown sugar has acid in it because it's got the natural molasses around it, and it behaves differently. So, I usually tell people to use your best judgment, but maybe find recipes that um, call for those things. And just lastly, in my life, I've seen a lot of health. Like there was a whole anti-fat. There were a lot of don't eat things over the years. And these things change, nutrition science changes, and um, sugar is sugar. Honey. I love honey, um, but
well, you're a sweet person. Um, so speaking of those things where we're, being told we can't consume things, this question
Mhm.
from Melissa. Hi, Melissa. Are you a fan of wine pairing with desserts? Since we're, like that's like don't get me started about suddenly not being able to drink wine is so not fun.
What?
But
Wait,
what do
what?
you what
Whoa,
do you
whoa,
think
whoa, whoa.
about that?
Um, I'm I'm for pairings with dessert. However, I'm anti. Um, there's this whole movement. Like in France, everybody's like, "Oh, you must have red wine with cheese." And then, people say in America, oh, I love red wine with chocolate. Well, to me, chocolate has tannins and red wine has tannins and they fight. So I want something like port or sherry or chartreuse with chocolate. With cheese, I want white wine generally because most cheeses are made in, the Loire region where white wines are made, the Jura, Comté cheese, and so forth. White wine to me doesn't compete with cheeses.
Yeah,
The flip side of all this is everybody's tastes are different. And if you like, a Cabernet Sauvignon avec chocolate, great.
yeah.
So I don't really have any strict pairings. I do often find though that by the time it's dessert, people are kind of, especially in France, when you drink a lot of wine with dinner, people are kind of alcoholed out, and people aren't fond of hard alcohol here like
Hmm.
we are in America. So, well, it's
Yeah,
changed, but
yeah. So you mentioned with chocolate chartreuse. I think don't you have a chocolate mousse recipe somewhere? Maybe I saw it on your website. I'm not sure where you offer chartreuse as one of the possible ways to flavor it. Did I
there's a
invent that?
no, there's a white chocolate chartreuse Bavarian on my website, and um, people say I don't like white chocolate. It's not chocolate. I'm like, so what? Sparkling wine's not champagne, but there's really good sparkling wine or prosecco. You can like these things, but white chocolate and chartreuse are perfect because you have this cocoa butter um, richness, and then you have chartreuse, which is herbal and sharp, and they just work perfectly together.
God, that's really cool. Are you able to easily find chartreuse in France these days? Because last time I was there, I couldn't. It still seemed to be not on the shelves.
We have a store in Paris. They have a chartreuse store in the Sixth. Um, yeah,
Okay,
and
next
you
time
can
I'm in
go in
Paris,
and
I'm gonna go.
buy. Yeah, I think the limit's 2 bottles, but they have everything. And I was at this wine Cave Bossetti in the Marais, and they sell a lot of chartreuse, and they have tons of chartreuse. So, um, I have an in because during COVID I was doing uh, Instagram lives, and Chartreuse told me this is before the shortage. They said we ran out of chartreuse. Someone from Chartreuse, is not official, but they said we ran out of chartreuse because of you. And I don't know if that's true. I think he was just saying that to make me feel good. But
um, okay. Somebody, I think it was Renee, pointed out vis-a-vis the Beurre d'Isigny conversation that you can find it sometimes here in the United States. I have
yeah,
seen it in really good supermarkets, and
yeah,
yeah.
they actually have they have an office in New Jersey, and they sell it's easy. And they actually, when I went to the factory, they were printing labels for a cheese they make just for Costco in America.
Oh wow.
I was
Okay.
like, oh, they're like, those are for Costco in America. They have very good customers. So.
Interesting. Okay. Well, oops. I'm David, thank you so much for being
Okay.
here. This has been such a good conversation. Everybody go out and buy Ready for Dessert, and join us if you like at the Cooks Without Borders cookbook club, where we're all cooking from it and posting our, photos of what we're baking from it
Oh, good.
on the chat, which is super fun, and would love to have you all join us there. And yes, buy the book, subscribe to David's Substack. And everybody, thank you so much for being here with us. It was a great conversation, David. I really
Yeah, thank you.
appreciate it. And
Next time we'll do a whole thing on French husbands.
that would be so much fun. And we won't complain about the French at all.
No, I often told my partner, I was like, you should do like a blog about me. Cause when I had my blog, I was writing about him in France. I was like, you should do a blog about me in French. So,
So funny. Okay, well, have a great day, everybody. And thank you again,
okay.
David. And thanks
Bye
everyone
bye.
for coming. Bye.